Well, I would like to present you some findings today concerning the treatment of pickling wastewaters. So pickling is a process that is used for cleaning metal surfaces. But it may be also the blueprint for other processes that become more and more important. That's the recovery of metals from recycling processes. So many of the things that I will present may be seen also in this aspect. Well, I will give you a short introduction into diffusion dialysis. That's a specific membrane separation process using ion exchange membranes. I will give you also some ideas of membranes and modules and plants that are used in this concept. And then I will stress two case studies. One is concerning the performance of a continuously running plant, diffusion dialysis plant, that was investigated over a period of 3 or 5 years regularly. And the second one is closely related to this. These are lab experiments concerning the fouling behavior of or the behavior of fouled membranes in comparison to new membranes on lab scale. Well, diffusion dialysis is a well-known technology that can be used for the treatment of highly concentrated acids. So here you have the spectrum. While nanofiltration membranes may also be used for highly concentrated metal-containing acidic solutions, diffusion dialysis has the advantage that it consumes fewer energy, because in principle no pumps are required, because the driving force is not a pressure, but it is a concentration gradient between two solutions. And the big advantage over other technologies, not membrane technologies, is also that diffusion dialysis, like most other membrane technologies, don't require any additional chemical agents. Well, here you can see the application in principle. So this is a typical, on the left-hand side, you can see a typical pickling line in the stainless steel industry. So it's a continuous cleaning process of so-called coils. And during this process, the acid gets in contact with the surface. Specific pollutants are removed. Also, part of the metal surface is reacting, and so the concentration of metals increases over the time in the baths, and the concentration of the acid that is active certainly decreases because of the reaction. What we achieve normally is a dark blue or dark green solution that can be seen in the middle, and on the right-hand side you can see the result of such a filtration process using diffusion dialysis membranes. So the effect is we receive active acid that can be recovered to the pickling process, and we receive a concentrate that contains almost all of the metals, and this solution can be also recovered, or the metals can be recovered by different processes, including precipitation especially. So, and in any case, there will be a wastewater formed that needs to be treated, and the final result is also then a neutralization sludge. But also here we did in former years some experiments how to recover the metals from the sludge. But this is not the topic today. So benefits of this procedure: we don't require a huge amount of new acid that is brought back to the process. We reduce the amount of wastewaters, of acidic wastewaters that need to be treated. And so because of the big reduction, also the amount of chemical agents used for the precipitation can be drastically reduced. Well, and for diffusion dialysis, several module types have been introduced. So the most important one for this application is the plate and frame module. You can see here a multitude of these modules, and inside where the white spaces can be seen, there's a multitude of membranes packed inside this structure. So then another technique or another module type that was introduced is the spiral wound module that is well known from reverse osmosis, for instance, and also hollow fibers have been used, but only the two types, plate and frame and spiral wound modules, have been used for the treatment of acidic solutions from the metal industry. So the advantage is quite clear. Using a plate and frame module, we have the opportunity to exchange membranes relatively easily when we see that the performance is changing. And another thing is that we have a relatively large area. So concerning this graph that you see here, the membrane area is about 1 meter times 2 meters. So it's a relatively large area, and in the lower photo you can see the structure of the respective spaces. And so it's relatively easy to exchange membranes. With the other concepts that were shown, this is not possible, so you have to get rid of the whole module when it's fouled or when the membranes are damaged. A big disadvantage of this technology is because it is working like a filter press. So you need metal frames that press the membranes together. So the whole setup is relatively heavy. On the other hand, with all diffusion dialysis types, we have a low mass transfer. We have a multitude of connections and accordingly also the fittings. And we also detected during the operation mechanical stress that is coming from the hydrostatic pressure and from the density of the solution that is different in the top part and in the bottom part of the respective modules. So there's different pressures working on the membranes, and this may also have a mechanical or a negative effect caused by mechanical pressure. So this is the theme, or what you can or how you can imagine how it works. So we have two solutions necessary. One is the polluted feed solution, that's the spent acid, and the other is plain water. So, and both solutions are fed in a technical module in counter-current mode, so that the acid is moving through the anion exchange membranes while the metal ions are rejected. And on the other hand, the water receives the acid and becomes the final product that can be recycled. Well, there are at least two main ideas how the transport through these membranes work. So the first one is more or less absorption diffusion process. So at first the respective material has to be absorbed by the membrane and then is transported by diffusion through the membrane, and on the other side it's released again. So this is a very simple model that does not take into account the presence of charged ions within the membrane. The second model is a bit more sophisticated. So it's a three-phase model. The idea is the membrane is more or less not a homogeneous one. It's a dense membrane, but not homogeneous. Specific parts of the membrane form the backbone. That's the hydrophobic region of the membrane. Then we have the so-called active region. That is the part of the backbone that carries the electric charges. And then we have an interstitial region that allows the cation migration through the membrane itself. Yeah? So the membrane itself has a positive charge that should reject all of the metal ions. and it should also reject the protons, but it doesn't reject the protons. The protons move easily through the membrane, and this is the effect of the interstitial region. So the transport of the different ions is different. The transport of charges related to the protons is by Grotthus effect or hopping effect. So the protons don't have to move by themselves, or not so much, but the electric charge is just transferred from one hydroxyl ion or one proton to another one. So this is the basic effect that we see. So this is the membrane, and this is the rough sketch how we can work. So on the upper part of the graph, you can see we have several possibilities for the operation. So the first one is the co-current flow. That means the concentrated solution that we want to treat and the water get into the module on the same side. The effect is that we have a relatively large concentration gradient at the inlet and a relatively small gradient at the outlet, and the total concentration gradient over the module is different. On the other hand, we can use the second one that I already presented. That's the countercurrent flow. So the acid and the water enter from different sides of the module, and the effect is that the gradient between the two solutions is more or less homogeneous over the whole membrane length or the whole membrane area. So that's seen here, and we can use these findings or these facts for calculating several important parameters. That's the proton permeability or diffusion coefficient. That's in literature denoted as U. We want to achieve a low co-ion permeability. That's the metal ions that should be rejected. And we should also have a high gradient between the proton transfer and the metal transfer. And that's referred to by the selectivity. So then there are some other important parameters, but I will refer only to these in the next slides. So I talked about the membranes, I talked about the setup. Now we have to talk about the solution, because the solution is also nasty. Well, we have several effects that we have to consider in diffusion dialysis. First effect is the solute, that's water, forms a hydrate shell around each and every ion. So that means the diameter of an ion is growing because it carries the water with it. And when we carry the respective ions, we also carry the water, and this gives also this is also an effect that causes friction and a transport resistance. On the other hand, if we transport ions together with the water, we dilute the respective final solution that we want to achieve. So this is what we also have to take into consideration when we select the membranes. Next effect is shown in the middle. We do not only have positively charged metal ions. Because of the complex chemistry behind, we can see that we have metals that are, as we expect, positively charged. We have metals that are also neutrally charged in these complexes, and we have metals that have a positive charge. So the positively charged ions would move through the negatively charged membranes, and so the selectivity also is impaired. And then another effect that we have to take into consideration when we talk about electrodialysis or diffusion dialysis is that, and also nanofiltration, we have electroneutrality conditions. So that means each solution needs to carry the same charge of positively and of negatively charged ions. Otherwise, this process or physics would be spoiled. Yeah? So this is necessary that we have the same charge in every solution. Okay, so this is a short insight into the membrane itself. When we talk about industrial solutions, we need a pretreatment. So this is done by microfiltration. If we do not filter it, the stack will get clogged. So this is gives you an impression when the particles that are inside the feed solutions are not removed, they are concentrated in the plate and frame module and then cannot be removed. So this is what you can see here. Okay, so and now the most important things. So normally, or in many cases, the water flow and the flow of the spent acid should be almost the same. So this is a recommendation of the providers of the membranes. So here we can see the volume flow was a little bit changed from time to time. And so we could see that the volume flow of water to feed was between 0.8 and 0.4, more or less. And here we can see the different recovery rates of the respective ions. So we can see that there is a tendency that the recovery of the bound metals goes down with the growing flow ratio and the concentration of the protons and the nitrate, for instance, which is an important part of these pickling acids, is increasing. But on the other hand, when we calculate the diffusion coefficient U, then we can see that this coefficient that is in principle the diffusion parameter is more or less constant. So this is the slope for the acid, and the blue one shows the coefficient for the metals. So it's constant, and the values are shown here, and they are quite comparable to the literature values that were found. So this is these are very small values, but they are comparable to medium conditions of membrane separation in this case. So this is the separation factor that is shown here. So it was also more or less constant with a value of 34, also a value that is comparable to many applications in the industry. Okay, give me 1 minute, then I can show you the results of the other experiments that were done on lab scale. So this was a 2-chamber cell. That means one membrane only, and on 2 sides the different solutions. That means water and the spent acid from the steel industry, and certainly this is a batch process, and the concentration in the diffuser, that means in the final product, is increasing over the time. So you can see here these slopes for the free acid and for the fluoride, for instance. Here the concentration of the iron and chromium is also increasing. As I said, we do not only have positively charged metal complexes, but also neutral or negatively charged things. This is one aspect, and also the membranes were partially already degraded. So again, we calculated diffusion coefficients, and the most important thing is the selectivity of the membranes that we compared. So it was an APS3, a new and a used one. After 3 years in operation, we could see that the transport possibilities changed over the time for the negative. And this was a new membrane from Fumatech that showed lower separation values when it was new. So the question is, how will it behave? Will it behave on the long term? Okay, so with this, finally come to an end. This is a short summary. So we see that diffusion dialysis is a process that may be used for future challenges, for instance, for battery material recycling. We can use it as well as for solutions coming from acidic solutions coming from the metal industry. So this is a relatively easy process, easy to control, easy to understand. The industrial investigations have shown similar values to literature values, so this is okay, that we did not calculate anything else. And the outlook is from literature that several researchers were not focusing only on dense membranes, but also tried to use membranes that are porous membranes, partially with some kind of active ingredients inside the pores, so that the diffusion process will be a little bit quicker. But I'm not convinced that membranes with pores are really fitting to this specific application of acid treatment. Okay, so thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much for this nice presentation. Are there any questions?